There's a lot of illegal activity associated with the music industry. A lot of people think of it like you just put out a song, it goes viral. But in reality, there's a lot of ties.
Your voice is so perfect for this type of content that you do. It's like frightening.
Some people are like, hey, I just put you on in the background. I'm like, I have things to say too. Do you listen to what I say or you just listen to like how I sound? There's other challenges that you kind of face when it comes to like building that brand loyalty. It's definitely good in some areas because it focuses on what you're actually trying to present. But in other areas, it falls short in the personal branding aspect. I grew up on YouTube before it became really commercialized. Whatever hobby I'd have, I'd consume content on it. So then I would eventually make it.
Look, I'm just spitballing here. There are opportunities aside from selling presets to really make a buck off of Barely Sociable.
Presets / milk sweats. That's the business plan. That's all you put on.
Presets and milk sweats. It rhymes. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. We are live on Discord because it is TCU's Day. We're here every single Tuesday. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, we've got a really sought-after guest. One of those people in the channel for guest requests that's come up like 87 times over the last year. So it seemed like a good idea to make that happen. But we got a couple coming up as well, don't we?
Yeah. We have CoffeeZilla coming up next week. If you listened to our episode last week, you'll understand that we have decided that this is a different person entirely, a new gimmick from Coffee Break. So it's CoffeeZilla.
First time on the podcast.
First time on the podcast, not a return guest, an evolved Pokemon. And following him, we'll have Sean Malone back on the podcast as well to talk about culture and economics and all sorts of fun things. But yes, tonight we are really excited to be graced by our guest.
We're excited. We're blessed. But hey, it feels like most of the people we talk to, all the ones we reference, they have these epic stories of getting their start painting on cave walls and then engaging in like a 40,000-year slog of crafting content until an algorithm finally grabs onto something. But in just 2 years and a couple dozen videos, Barely Sociable has amassed 1 million devotees who look to him to unravel the mysteries lurking in the oddest corners of the internet. Barely Sociable has analyzed the dark side of the Silk Road in the book that is tied to 75,000 disappearances, the mysterious black box of Flight 980. And his unmasking of Bitcoin creator Satoshi Nakamoto exhibited the singular subdued tone, deliberate editing, and dark visuals that make Barely Sociable viewers feel like they're being exposed privately to a back alley secret meant only for them. The subtle intensity of a Barely Sociable video actually makes you a little nervous about what experiencing a fully sociable video must feel like. And we do have these different degrees of sociable, the similar side channel Slightly Sociable, the music channel Barely Musical, and one that is ominously empty for now. We don't even know what's going to fill the void that is currently Fairly Sociable. Weeks ago, Barely teased his upcoming series that is an expose on the dark side of the music industry, what's probably an endless well of shocking content. You mentioned on Twitter that what started as a simpler project had to become a full series. What's the craziest piece of dirt you've uncovered with music?
Oh, I mean, well, as someone like I try to go on like topics that I'm like genuinely interested in because I do music just for like production. I've always done it for fun, and for this case in particular, from the music industry. Okay, so there's a lot of dirt. It's kind of hard to pick one thing. I would say the biggest thing is that the entertainment industry doesn't really focus on like real issues going on. They kind of turn a blind eye to everything, basically, whether it be payola, whether it be, sketchy deals. Like I could even throw this out in conversation. Like there's a lot of conspiracies regarding like artists who pass away, right? And there's always like these things like the 27 Club and stuff like that. But and you always think that that's like fans that are like going like they're just afraid to see like their artists pass away, right? So they come up with, you know, these conspiracy theories to kind of justify their passing, right? I think a lot of people on like social media have seen that. But in reality, if you read up on the music industry and you read up on its ties to organized crime and in particular its historical, you know, connections in that industry, you realize it's not actually that far-fetched at all. And there's a lot of illegal activity associated with the music industry. I would say that that's, a lot of people think of it like, you know, you just put out a song, it goes viral. But in reality, basically everything in the music business, there's a lot of ties. I don't know. It's a very long-winded answer, but it's kind of everything with the music industry.
Are any of those conspiracies true? Did you find something so compelling? So
yeah,
they're not conspiracies, or they're not crazy then.
Yeah. So, you know, whenever like narcotics trafficking gets brought up in a local country, the local media doesn't like to kind of like address the fact that there's organized crime in their own country. In Mexico, it's a little bit more apparent. But like, if you go look at artists who get killed by their labels, basically, if you're doing business with the underworld, and there are like, just to put it frankly, the person who, you know, Universal Music Group, right? The largest music company in the world, they owe their success to the Chicago mob. Basically, the Chicago outfit. It was a guy who booked shows for his speakeasies, Al Capone speakeasies. That was the guy who founded MCA, which later became Universal Music Group. So there's deep-rooted connections to organized crime. And the way that they do business in organized crime is that if I don't want to reveal too much, but basically they don't file lawsuits. They kill people. And if you, I know it sounds crazy out of context, but I do have a video that will kind of dive into this a little bit deeper and look at particular case files and stuff. That's the one I've been working on, and there's a lot. Yeah, I feel like I've been going crazy talking about this just in general conversation, unless you can see exactly what I'm referring to. But yeah.
We're definitely looking forward to seeing what you uncovered. What I found really funny and serendipitous in a way is that Matt and I spent an entire podcast episode essentially where I was talking about how the grunge era artists are pretty much all dead. At least all of the lead singers, you know, all of the frontmen are all dead. And I kid you not, like that night or the next day, Mark Lanegan died. Like it's like we almost spoke it into existence. Yeah. Mark Lanegan then died, you know, from Screaming Trees and all his solo stuff, and then, you know, later Queens of the Stone Age. But then you started tweeting about this stuff like a few days later. I'm like, what is going on? This is some weird cosmic alignment thing around this topic. And you know, I didn't in any way talk about conspiracy theories because I'm really not familiar with them. I hadn't heard about this idea that like record labels would kill their artists. I was mostly just going into the depression and like the dark side of being a musician and being like a sad musician, and it just end up, you know, culminating after however many years of the booze and everything just catching up.
Let me put it, so a very easy way to understand this is that after an artist dies, they basically there's a lot of money that's invested into a musician, right, in the music industry, right? So when they invest a lot of money into them, right, like let's say they leave after 2 or 3. I mean, to even unwrap the like entire system of the music industry, how they like to, it's basically a what do they call it? A consolidation of like power that they do that creates the system that is the music industry. But to put it simply, there's no other industry on the planet where a worker for a company, their work is worth more after they're dead, after a certain point, because once the artist kind of hits their peak, right, and over time, they kind of fade in popularity usually, right? Once that sound trend is gone. So then there becomes a point in time, and by the way, they can take out life insurance policies on them. There's cases that I found as well where an artist will, the band's about to break up, right? They're trying to leave the music industry, all of a sudden, suicided, right? It's very, very common, very common. I have a couple cases that I'll be going over, but there's always ties to the mob. There's always ties to other things. And basically, yeah, it's not to say every artist's death by any capacity is, but just looking at like the data, you're 5 to 10 times more likely to die of an accident if you're a musician for some reason. And a lot of the things that they focus on are usually like, like the idea that they're these like tortured souls. But in reality, substance is apparent in nearly every industry, and even for people who are not successful. And the other thing too is that fame isn't like, it's incredibly deadly in the music industry for some reason, but fame is not deadly for like politicians and other noteworthy people based on other studies I've looked at. So there's something about the music industry in particular that's particularly deadly. But yeah, I've already said too much about this.
When can we get that in YouTube? It would be so much more exciting when we talk to people and they're like, oh, I've been grinding in grandma's basement for 7 years, making this stuff that nobody was watching. It would be way better if people were like dodging organized crime.
I mean, obviously you gotta be careful what you say, right?
Yeah. That's why I'm going to end up choking on a ham sandwich on the toilet before you know it. It's happening. It's coming.
Hey man, I know it's like a meme. Some people get like suicided, but dude, if you like, the more you look into cases, like I've covered multiple on my channel, not just this one. Anytime there's like anything to do with like narcotics trafficking, all of a sudden the police force just like gets really, really incompetent just by happenstance. And yeah, it's the more familiarity you have with like more case files you kind of go down, you just kind of notice these a few of them, right? And because I have this channel, I just obsess over this weird stuff, right? And it sounds like you're crazy when you say this stuff, but yeah, I hate that it's even labeled a conspiracy in the music industry, though, because literally everything in that business is racketeering runs wild in the music business. So if they're conspiring, that by definition would just mean people acting in accordance to and do things unlawful, right? Which payola goes on to this day. That's a conspiracy, right? It's still there's like a bunch of text messages that were released from Rolling Stone in 2016 that basically exposed like every artist that's top right now for paying for radio play still. So, and the FCC does nothing about it. But yeah, anyways, I'm ranting. That's
illegal. That's illegal to pay to have a radio station play your song.
Is if they don't disclose it. Yeah.
Okay.
So then they basically use a bunch of middlemen to kind of get around that. And they do a bunch of accounting tricks and stuff to kind of cover it up. There was like a attorney general investigation like 2003 with the FCC, and like basically they just gave him a slap on the wrist. It's never been properly enforced. It's just like one of those don't do that kind of things, right? But everyone does. Yeah. Anyways.
Put down your can of Hyper Hydro Monster and your Crimson Berry White Claw. It's time to rethink the beverages in your life. We drink a tremendous amount of tea, working on videos, recording the podcast, but we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. They've got a gunpowder green tea called Space Cowboy. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know why Kevin likes it. And I used to chew gunpowder green tea leaves when I played baseball in the 90s. I love the stuff. Dragonwell Z, Samurai Chai Plu, black teas, herbals. The Dragon's Treasure describes itself as a haven for anime and tea lovers for a reason. They've even got a tea called Uwu. It's got apple bits and cocoa nibs. It's crazy. I bought the 60 tea sampler pack as soon as I could. I wanted to try everything. It's that good. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using the code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description. Look, find me another place that sells Russian caravan tea with a name like, "And then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked." You can't. Thedragonstreasure.com, 10% off when you enter the code CREATE at checkout. The link's in the description below. Get brewing, Space Cowboys.
Why are the artists worth more dead?
Well, number one, they can take out a life insurance policy on them. So they can insure the profits over their lifetime. So it's called a non-performance clause. So basically, it's also called a hit clause. But basically, hit clause, it allows them to take out, it's a record contract clause that allows them to take out life insurance policies that are called key man insurance. And basically, that can be used to insure profits over the lifetime for merchandise, recording, touring, right? So if they fail to meet the expectations for, or like they have an accident or they can't perform anymore, then basically that's insured by the company. So let's say the artist is on a downward, trend, things aren't going well, right? You can look this up. Basically, there's like Rap-A-Lot Records, for example, has a policy that was one of their artists brought it up. He said, I don't like this because it makes us worth more dead than alive. But in reality, this has been going on for a long time, since like the early days. But yeah, it's a
sensible though, isn't it?
Repeat that.
That's kind of a sensible thing to do, though, if your game is essentially talent development.
Absolutely. It's a smart business.
Most of the time, you put a whole lot into somebody before they make a dime.
Yeah.
You know, and you think about people, I can't think of the really famous cases of body parts being insured. I remember Kylie Minogue had either her legs or butt or both insured because you know, her earnings were going to change if her appearance changed.
Absolutely.
So it does make sense, like on paper, but it is kind of grim, isn't it? That you'd know that somebody else would be making a buck when you died.
Especially when they can do it in secret and they don't know. Part of it is there's confidentiality where only the label and the insurance company are the ones that exchange information. The label or the insurance company can do an investigation into certain things, but they don't have access to like law enforcement resources, right? The other thing that's worth considering is like on social media now, whenever an artist dies, it just like it has, there's been studies that I reference as well that basically they don't go back to like pre-death levels, like their sales. So not only are they getting the life insurance policy that insures it, they're also getting a bunch of money recouped that they originally. So basically when they invest into the artist, they're okay investing that money because when they die, that will revert back to the label. And if you do this over the course of several generations, you'll have people dying and coming back. And it kind of creates this very long-term cash flow, if that makes sense. Because they own the masters, right? Well, the label owns the masters of the songs. So even after they die, they're still getting the majority of the royalty, basically. So, yeah, well, the whole purpose of like the advance and like record contracts is to kind of give them some money, but they don't get to keep ownership. Most of the time they get some portion of the royalty, but they don't usually have the masters. Depends on like the deal and stuff. But yeah, it's a mess, man. That industry is honestly a mess because then you have like the money laundering aspect of it too, because art naturally draws that in. And I don't think a lot of people know that, basically like, you know, if you see like a banana taped to a wall that sells for like 110 grand, everyone's like money laundering. But when they see like a song that has like a shit ton of views and you never heard of this person before, they don't think that, you know what I mean? But in reality, a lot of rap groups are fronts for illegal activity as well to make themselves appear legitimate. Total.
Somebody's going to take you out.
What's that? Yeah, that's something you got to be careful about. That's fine.
You're going to get rubbed off here in a matter of months. It sounds almost terrifying.
It is, but as long as you're, you know, I'm a little tactful in the video. I'm going to be talking about things that are older. You know, you don't go poking around in people's business in the modern day. But yeah,
that's a good thing to live by. This is not a question. This is just a comment, but your voice is so perfect for this type of content that you do. It's like frightening. Like it's very, very strange. And I don't even know if it would be as effective if you had a different voice, but that like Rod Serling kind of like monotone, low gravelly sort of, you know, imagine if you will.
There is a gravitas to it, isn't there?
It works. Yeah.
It's just the vibe. The vibe.
It is
right?
the vibe.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like, if it's just people, because some people are like, hey, I just put you on in the background. I'm like, is it just? I have things to say too. Do you listen to what I say, or you just listen to like how I sound? Yeah.
The ASMR. Yeah,
I know.
Exactly. Yeah, you are like a fan, or like like ocean waves, like something like that, just to calm people down.
Maybe I'll start a new channel.
The thing that's so amazing to me about this topic is that once you start talking about it, it does raise a lot of alarms. Like it does seem really weird when you think about how many artists, musicians die young as opposed to any sort of other entertainment industry. When you're right, like those same vices, you know, hard drugs and, you know, whatever, hard living certainly comes with the territory of actors and actresses and comedians and I don't know, like like theater actors? Do they have hard? I have no idea.
Hollywood. Sorry, one quick thing. Hollywood does have this a little bit too. But in every industry, but in particular, if the financial incentives are skewed in such a way that they become worth more dead, that's just business. So whenever there's whenever there's enterprising individuals in like an industry willing to take on that risk, because the reward is so great, that's just human nature at that point, which is rather disturbing. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I can think of Hollywood, Brittany Murphy, Heath Ledger. There are certainly, back in the day, you had James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, like plenty of people. Bruce Lee died very young. Certainly that has been the case where people have died young in that industry. But man, it seems like the list for musicians is way, way longer.
Well, yeah. And this is what's really disturbing, because if you go through like the CIA's like handbook on assassination, right? There's three different kinds of like assassinations, right? There's an open assassination, which is just like a normal assassination. There's a closed or like secretive one. Basically, that a successful closed assassination is not one that's labeled an assassination to the public. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the easiest way to do and then the third one is I don't even want to say it, you'll get demonetized or whatever, but the third type of assassination is done for publicity. Those are the three kinds, right? But the second one is the most apparent, in my opinion, in what we see in just like general America, right? It's basically like a contrived accident. It's very common in the music industry, and it's very hard to prosecute because you have to prove intent, you have to prove a grander conspiracy, and then you have to have those people survive and make it to trial. Very difficult. There's been multiple cases in Hollywood in particular where someone's like around for like a moment where someone like OD'd or something, right? And then all of a sudden, like all the witnesses just start ODing themselves, like Whitney Houston, right? Whitney Houston drowned in a bathtub, right? And she had classic defense wounds on her body. And not a lot of people know this, but her daughter was rushed to the ER for the same reason, basically. Like she was drowning in a bathtub the night before Whitney Houston died. And then a year later, after
That's a dangerous bathtub. It's like a horror movie.
Well, get this. A year later, Whitney Houston's daughter, the one who inherited all of her money, right? Then drowns in a bathtub.
Oh my God.
And then the key witness, there were two key witnesses. One of them was Nick Gordon. He was also present and around for Whitney Houston's death. He was around that area. And then he was also around for Bobby Christina's death. And, or not death, but basically she was in a coma after she drowned. She was still alive, but she died after like a year in the coma or something, right? Then Nick Gordon gets found legally liable for the death of Bobby Christina, right? Then he mysteriously overdoses. And then the other key witness who was like next to, who was there when Bobby Christina was in the bathtub, right? Also overdoses. So take that information with what you will, but do it with, I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say. Yeah, tongue-tied completely. But yes, there's a lot of cases like that. Yeah.
But if, let's say you were going to, you put together this conspiracy, you're going to go through this list of people. Why wouldn't you vary it up? Why wouldn't you engineer, a car crash or something similar, or something simple and believable? Like, why would you roll the dice on having, 3 bathtub incidents in a row?
Well, normally it's not, they label it like drugs, right? The most common is drugs, and drugs complicated, then you drowned in the bathtub, right? So most people know for Whitney Houston, it's like, yeah, they think it was because of complications from that. But dude, they never released the security footage of her floor, right? What does that tell you? And basically like, yeah, the point with what I'm trying to, repeat what you said about variance, just so I understand. So I had a point, but I'm kind of like blanking.
Oh yeah, no, I was just thinking like, it doesn't appear more suspicious and
okay,
too strange when things are too similar like that. Like, why wouldn't you go simple and believable?
Well, the most common, like according to the same like CIA book, right? The contrived accident, like the drug overdose one's like the fourth option, right? Like the first option is like pushing them off like a tall building when no one's around, because that's very it's the simplest, right? There's no cleanup, there's no nothing. The second one is pushing them in front of a train when no one's around, or I can send you a link to that and you can read through it. But yes, there is a lot of variants. There's a lot of mysterious deaths in the music industry in particular that are also just like, he was like they basically he fell out of a window from the third story, right? Or he drank gasoline even though there was none found in his stomach in the autopsy, right? There's a bunch of stories like that. And even like the guy who, oh God, I don't want to say that. Never mind. Yeah.
The strange one to me with music people and all celebrities really is when there's a death that results from incredibly fast driving. It's like I was reading about Victor Tsoi was a musician in the Soviet Union in the 80s. He had a band called Kino. And as far as Soviet music went, Kino was massive. So it was a really big deal when Victor Tsoi was killed in this car accident. But it was going like 110 miles an hour or something. And that's the strange one is you always read like somebody was tragically killed because they were going 130 miles an hour on the Autobahn. It's like, I know people who occasionally drive fast, but I can't tell you a friend who like gets drunk and cruises at 140 habitually. But it seems like when you reach a certain level of celebrity, like the end to most nights is just cranking over 100 miles an hour on the highway.
Right.
So here I pulled up the CIA thing because I know they brought up automobile accidents, right? So for the contrived accident, they say automobile accidents are a less satisfactory means of assassination. If the subject is deliberately run down, very exact timing is necessary. An investigation is likely to be thorough. If the subject's car is tampered with, reliability is very low. The subject may be stunned or sedate or drugged and then placed in the car, but this is only reliable when the car can be run off a high cliff or into deep water without observation. So there you go. That's words from the CIA themselves. So,
and where is this how-to guide? Is this like a public service they're putting out on their website or what?
So this is like, I think, a study from the 50s. They basically, this was not supposed to be released and they eventually did. It's called the Study of Assassination by the CIA. But yeah, it's crazy stuff that there is literature on this stuff because it's very morbid to see like intricate analysis on people's lives, right?
Yeah, or their mysterious deaths. All I know is that my father has been saying my whole life that Jimi Hendrix was murdered.
He was.
And he's going to be vindicated by you and this video, I'm sure. So please tell us and my father why Jimi Hendrix was murdered.
He had a $2 million life insurance policy taken out on him. Basically, there was also a roadie who claimed that. So basically, this is what's interesting. I don't know if there's much to this last portion of it, but basically, the manager for Jimi Hendrix had ties to organized crime, as far as I'm aware, and he was also cheating Jimi Hendrix out of a lot of money, right? And basically, he was like a former MI. No, am I thinking of someone else? No, let me look up the guy's name, but I'll stick to the general consensus. The timeline regarding his sleeping pill thing is completely off. He was trying to get out of his record contract the day before, right? And this is the same thing. It's like they just become worth more alive than dead because of the non-performance clause, right? So then they have a $2 million life insurance policy taken out on him, and that was confirmed. And basically, they always try and play it off like that's just business. But in reality, if he had gone through with that, then the company and the management would have lost a lot of money because he would have gone off and worked somewhere else, right? They couldn't control him anymore. And I think that on the night, so the woman he was with, I think it was like, was it Monica? I forget her name, the last name. Basically, there was there's conflicting witness testimony. She's retold the story like 40 different times. She even later claimed the mafia killed him, like years later, right? And he did have some business dealings with the mafia. I have to brush up on this very specifics, but I remember reading through on it, and there was some deal going on with some building or something. It's been a while, but the sleeping pill thing, it was an open verdict with the coroner. He said there's mysterious circumstances, but there's not enough to convict anybody. Does that make sense? So like the fact that he took all those sleeping pills, he wasn't even known to take sleeping pills, if I recall. Yeah, it's honestly just a lot of he said, she said, right? And a lot of conflicting witness testimony. And you're just like, well, what do I do with this, right? And then he just so happens to be worth more dead than alive. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but like I said, it's hard to get a conviction, which leads to conspiracy theories, right? Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that's the big
that's
one.
Something that pops up. Yeah, that comes up a lot in the Vsauce 2 videos of late, right, Kevin? Where it's like I know we've had conversations where we've realized like you could get away with pretty much anything before forensics.
Yeah, yeah, and especially if you have the coroner working for you.
That probably helps.
You know what's crazy? The last video I did, the fucking pardon my language, the Patinella one, the same coroner. Oh God. Yeah, the same coroner who shows up in that episode shows up in another case related to a musician, and it's the same habitual look the other way thing. And part of me wonders is like, are these people just scared for their own life if they open that can of worms, or are they actually paid off? You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, this is definitely a mob thing, but I'm not going to push into it further because it's going to open a can of worms, and I'm going to be the next person drowned at the bottom of the river. Or is it because they actually are getting bribed? You know, because that's part of like a law enforcement conundrum, is like taking the path of least resistance of like, do I really want to go into this one? Right. Even though it's their job. Right. Anyways.
We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps, and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
I mean, I'm shocked, not only with some of the, the stuff that we've done on Vsauce 2 with like the crime analysis videos, but gosh, even if you just watch the first 48, which is a TV show that's on like A&E or something like that, we all grew up and continue to be kind of inundated with programming, especially on network television. That's just all like CSI and Law and Order, and it's always like, oh, just run that thing through this jigamabob, and of course it was Johnny, and they always solve the case, and it's always so easy. If you watch a show like the first 48, you're like, how does anything ever get solved? It's like they find the dead body, no one's talking about it. There's no evidence, there are no leads, and everybody just kind of shrugs, and they hope that somebody makes a mistake and, tips them off about something. But for the most part, it just seems hopeless in a lot of these cases to solve. And that's just to kind of even figure out who did it, let alone build a case in order to bring a conviction, because that's an entirely different part of the process. It's so crazy.
Totally separate, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance and meta game to like criminology, especially in like the interviews and stuff. Like, have you seen that one guy, Jim Can't Swim's channel, right? Basically, like the thing that needs to be considered is, as much as like legal systems are put in place, they have gaps that they miss, right? Where, you know, someone can basically get away with it if there's not enough evidence. And obviously, organized crime in particular knows how to navigate those gaps, right? By using middlemen, using other things to kind of, because it's like, okay, let's say for like an overdose thing again, right? And then you have to prove that the dealer gave it to them, right? And he knew that it was messed up before, like it was too strong or something, right? And then you have to prove that there was some payment to him before, and then you have to prove that there was some intent on behalf of, like, you know, some organization to profit off it beforehand. And unless you're getting like some written confession, right? Like, how do you even prove that, right? Fundamentally, what evidence would you need to prove a broader conspiracy like that in a court of law? And that's why middlemen tend to be very, very good, because they obviously are used to, it's like having a shell company on a shell company. It's like used to distance themselves. Does that make sense? But yeah, the legal system, if you've ever seen that one clip with like Lil Wayne or something, he's like in a deposition. He's like, these people won't help you in the real world. he like says that to the guy. And I think there's two like real, you know, legal systems. There's kind of the real world, and then there's like, you know, what the legal system is capable of with like forensics and stuff.
Wait, what was the Lil Wayne situation? I'm not familiar with that.
I don't remember the specifics, but there's some clip where he's just going off in the deposition, right? Like acting very, you know, like this is bullshit kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he threatens the person giving the deposition, or it's a veiled threat, right? But I can look up the specifics. It's a pretty cool clip. I don't know if you can, if I can find it right now, but it's just for
Charles Kahn just popped that into the Discord. Lil Wayne gives one of the most hilarious depositions ever.
Must see.
Must see.
the little parentheses clickbait part, but it's apparently we must see it. So I'll definitely check that out. You know, after we're done today. But I want to kind of go back to the beginning and talk about your channel a little bit. You know, you mentioned this sort of briefly. Your kind of desire to remain anonymous, and how obviously that kind of plays well with the type of content that you're making, so you don't upset anybody. So talk about like the ways in which that benefits you, you know, to be anonymous, and maybe in some of the ways that, you know, it doesn't benefit you. I
mean, I'm not necessarily like anonymous. Like, you can go look up what I look like, you know, it's not like it's out there. You know what I mean? But there's no way to be like 100% anonymous on YouTube. Your tax info alone is tied to like a AdSense account, right? So there's always going to be, that's never insured, right? But you can't stay out of the spotlight. And I think the point that I try to make is that I just want to make it, you know, about what I have to say, not about who I am, if that makes sense. Because I don't want, like, I know when I make my videos, I just make it about stuff that I'm kind of interested in. And, you know, I just, hey, look at this crazy shit I found. And basically just go from there. But when it comes to like being a YouTuber who doesn't focus on themselves, there's a couple things. I noticed that there's a lot more like, how do I put it? It's very good at like presenting information in a matter-of-fact way when you use this kind of format. But in other ways, like if you're like a YouTuber who wants to, you know, like it's a lot harder to sell like merchandise, right? When you don't like show yourself wearing it in a video or something like that, right? And I think most people will just like recognize like a creator based on like what they look like, because that's how we, you know, come to know people, right? So there's other challenges that you kind of face when it comes to like building that brand loyalty. But I try to make up for that with like creative editing. I like try to like, and something I'm starting to do more is like I'm literally doing the animations, doing like world building in like Cinema 4D to like show how this case file went down, right? So it's definitely good in some areas because it focuses on like what you're actually trying to present, but in other areas, you know, it falls short in the personal branding aspect. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, we just need to have like some kind of mascot, a llama, or I don't know. Do you have like any sort of affinity for a specific type of like cute animal? I don't know.
I feel like
What's a really standoffish animal that you could classify as barely sociable?
Oh,
like a wolf. Oh God.
Yeah.
There you go. Like a lone wolf. But I don't know. I kind of just bullshitted and came up with that name. I didn't really add much thought to it.
It's a great name.
Hey, I'm glad it worked out, but yeah, I just kind of like, what am I going to name this channel? I was going to make like product, like videos on like consumer products and like kind of like Company Man. If you've seen his channel before, that's what I originally started my channel to do, and then I just more people gravitated towards me talking about creepy shit. So I pardon my language, I ain't get a hold of it right now, but yeah, it's just if the shoe fits, wear it, right?
Look, more importantly, I just Googled solitary animals, and let's go. Let me just go down this list real quick, and see if anything jumps out. I'll let you know what jumps out to me, but I don't want to influence anyone's decisions here. So we have Chuckwalla lizard, Hawaiian monk seal, desert tortoise, moose, solitary sandpiper. That's cheating. It's in the name. Snow leopard, polar bear, and platypus. Anything stand out for you?
I have a choice. I know what I want this to be.
I can. The problem of having a mascot is that it's going to get, it's the internet, so they're going to draw inappropriate pictures of it. So
that's part of the fun. That's not the problem.
True. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the solitary sandpiper. I don't know. That rolls off the tongue, even though it's cheating.
It is alliterative. Matt, what's your choice?
I would roll with platypus.
That's what I was going to say. Platypus. Yeah. Come on.
What a great one. I don't know how you'd be able to choose anything else when there's a chance at all the strange aspects of a platypus that you could use graphically. It's too enticing.
Can we name some of the strange things about platypuses? I wish this
they lay eggs.
They lay eggs. They have like some horrific poisonous spur, not poisonous, venomous spur.
Yeah.
I believe. I think they do milk. They do create milk, I believe, because they are
Have you ever milked
mammals.
A platypus, Kevin?
Oh no, they can't be a mammal. They lay eggs. What are platypuses? No, I haven't milked a platypus.
Aren't
do they have milk?
I thought they were no, they were what the, I don't know, man. Let me look this up. Platypus is
do platypuses sweat milk? Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
It is
they just look so strange.
Egg-laying mammals.
So wide and flat.
So they are mammals. They just have egg. Yeah, okay.
But they're like
they don't have teats.
The bill though.
They don't have teats, but they concentrate milk to their belly by sweating it out, and they feed their children milk sweat. Come on.
It reminds me of like meat,
what is that?
Meat sweat or milk.
Come and get your milk sweats.
Yeah.
No, kids. Look,
so after all this, I think it's pretty clear why this is such a good choice for branding a YouTube channel.
There's so much opportunity here. It's just staring you right in the face. It's sweating milk right into your eyes.
Oh God!
Well, you could sell it in jars. I mean,
I was going to say,
if you sell bath water, you can sell your sweat milk.
Oh God!
The milk jar
Top tier gets the milked venom spur.
Yes,
That's a good idea.
What about the lactose intolerant viewers? Okay, never mind. I'm going to stop.
They can just eat some platypus eggs.
There you go.
Sunny side up.
Wait, that's
scrambled over easy. An omelet.
I thought eggs are still. Wait, aren't eggs still lactose?
That would satisfy the vegans.
No, they're not. Eggs aren't dairy.
Hey, eggs are dairy. It's not dairy. Oh no, I'm an idiot. Sorry. All right, off topic. We'll reel it back in here.
No. Eggs are not a dairy product. Eggs are just eggs.
Yes.
That's how they're classified technically in the food pyramid.
A pareve.
We got way off topic. That's okay. That was the most important thing, is to solidify your animal for your mascot, so we can have a plush and a keychain, sweatshirts, maybe a hat, a beanie. I don't know. There's a lot of branding opportunity. A U2s.
If it's platypus, then I'll take the full on onesie.
Yeah.
With the duck bill coming off my forehead. I'm going to go all out if I have a chance to.
The other aspect to that too, though, is that some people don't like to, there's certain aspects of like people who watch creators, but it's very hard to get them like the idea of YouTuber merchandise sometimes feels very cheesy. I don't know why. I think you've run into that a couple of times where you're just like, this is just a simple cash grab that you can tell, right? And basically it's like, it doesn't complement the brand. It just exists, right? So with like merchandising and stuff like that, there's almost like a little bit more opportunity for someone who doesn't like show their face. Getting back to this, like, for other, like, if there's other avenues that you could pursue, like, let's say I did a channel like teaching some of the editing I do, right? And then you have like a very concise course that's fairly priced, not like a marketing course or something, like a $12 thing, right? Or you could sell like assets or whatever. There's other branding opportunities that you can do for people who are interested in creating things digitally, whether it be like, so let's say you make music for your videos, then you sell a sample pack from the type of music that you would produce from the videos. So if someone wants something in that style, they can get it directly from the source. Does that make sense? Or some kind of assets related to that. Like for like 3D models and stuff like that, there's sub product markets and stuff like that. The whole digital creator space. I think a lot of people are like, well, this guy, I like his style of video essay, so I might go check out his presets that he has for editing or something like that, right? That's it. Because a lot of people will like look up like, well, what microphone does he use? Or like, what gear does he use, right? As opposed to like, what shirt do you have? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? As opposed to like a personal brand. There's other aspects to that.
It's more like a professional brand. Real quick, though, do you think that the platypus onesie could have like a sack in the stomach that you could fill with milk, and then you could like squeeze it, and then milk would kind of,
oh my God,
come out of it? It would just kind of soak through in dribs and drabs. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it would smell like this would smell like really quickly. You'd probably have to wash it right away. But look, I'm just spitballing here. There are opportunities aside from selling, your presets to really make a buck off of Fairly Sociable.
Presets / milk sweats. That's the business plan. That's all you put on.
Presets and milk sweats. It rhymes.
You go to the bank, try to get funding. You're like, well, it's presets and it's milk sweats. And then you just look and wait for an answer.
It's the name of this episode.
That's milk sweat.
I think we got to give everyone else a chance. So I might have to pass on that.
But you mentioned editing, and that is a pretty sophisticated part of what you present. So you didn't really come out of nowhere. I mean, it's you do see people start a channel, they want to do a YouTube thing, and they figure it out along the way, and they slowly get better. But you couldn't have done that. You must have been very good at all of this stuff, from the writing and storytelling aspect to the narration aspect to the editing, all of that, a lot longer than 2 years ago.
You're on to me.
But at some point you had to have decided, I want to put this together and put it on YouTube. What flipped that switch?
Well, I've been doing I've always just had hobbies, right? Like when I was younger, like I grew up on YouTube before like it became really commercialized, like kind of like back when the days where you had people like recording their TV for like Let's Plays and shit, like basically like I would just like kind of absorb myself in that world, whether I was in whatever hobby I'd have, I'd consume content on it, right? So then I would eventually make it because I was doing something and I wanted to share that, right? So I've gone through, like, a lot of people say I have a lot of channels, right? Like I do the music thing, I do this thing. And even before this, people have tracked down my history for other stuff that I've done. And yes, I've always done like digital creative stuff, from like, Call of Duty montages to like when I was younger, like to like skateboarding videos. And then like, what's it called? Like the first video I uploaded to YouTube is like, not the first video, but I think I was probably like, it's not up anymore, but I was probably like 8, dude. And it was on like jailbreaking your iPod or some shit, right? And it was like the first iteration of like jailbreaking. Like you just went to a website. And so I was like doing tutorials at like 8, man. So, but I've always kind of been on the sideline and never really tried it seriously. Did that make sense? And then Barely Sociable was kind of the first attempt to make like broad mass appeal content. Does that make sense? Where like it's basically not niche, hobbyist stuff. Does that make sense? So I've done marketing stuff in the past, which is an incredibly dark industry, and I got out of it because I didn't like it, and it just wasn't something that sat right with me at the end of the day. So I did that for a while. I did.
Wait, why? Why? What about it didn't sit right with you? Just
so CoffeeZilla, right? He talks about like a lot. So me and him recorded. I've helped him behind the scenes for like a lot of like investigations and stuff, and we exchange ideas and stuff, and I've known him for well before he like kind of popularized the second channel, because he started that series with like fake gurus, right? And I was going to kind of tell people that I kind of came from that world. And this isn't new info. I've talked about this before, right? But basically, it's like I was someone who started like I've always done random stuff. Like I had a business for a while. I sold one of them, and then I started teaching on that business, right? And basically, I saw a lot of people who'd never actually did anything that they were teaching on YouTube, right? And like in the marketing world in particular, it's just kind of like a success, for lack of a better, it's like a cult, or like I don't want to say like, can I say inappropriate things? Or can you cut it out? like a circle jerk, it's just a complete success circle jerk. It's complete.
It is self-reinforcing, isn't it? It's dependent on, it's like, what is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail kind of
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah. And it's so unbelievably fake. And basically I was in that industry and for a little bit, and I made enough to make a full-time living, right? But it wasn't like I enjoyed it. I didn't, I had like I taught like, Facebook advertising, right? For people who didn't know it, I'd give them like an introductory course, how to build out like a retargeting funnel, right? It was like practical stuff. It wasn't, but then you always have this like, this temptation, like, well, I could teach drop shipping or something like that, because it's meant to cater to people who are insecure about their wealth and stuff like that, right? Who just want to build a business and have money, but aren't really, they're like basically, it's like it's almost like if you ever sat through like a marketing pitch, you notice how it's very similar to like a sermon. Basically the goal there is not to teach effectively or be a proper communicator and teach the ups and downs and real side of an industry. Those people that do those scummy like seminars and stuff, that's meant to be like a sermon, like a come to Jesus kind of thing, right? Where they break down your mental objections to starting like a business, right? And they take you from where you're at and they manipulate you into buying a course, which then once you spend a bunch of money, you're going to feel like you're obligated to do it. But in reality, it's kind of just preying on people's insecurities. And I just didn't like that, because even when I would try to do things, especially in advertising, because it's so subjective, I think there's proper ways to teach like editing or like skills, but not, the people who teach like kind of the all around business success, like are more motivational speakers that just, that's all they really do. Right. Is they motivate people. Right. And those are usually, it's just selling hot air. Right. But I hope that clarifies a little bit with it, or gives you some.
Yeah, I just picture Tom Cruise in Magnolia. Isn't that what he was doing? Have you seen that movie? It's kind of an old movie now. Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, directed that.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, anyway, I think he's one of those guys that, the power of you or whatever sort of thing.
Yeah.
Break down your brain walls.
Exactly.
And enter the new you, and that sort of thing.
Yesterday, I was going to say yesterday I was reading about EST, which was a very popular one in the late 70s and early 80s, EST. And that was exactly like, you could have taken what you just said, that fine line between cult and self-help training. But it was exactly what you said, where it's breaking people down and then kind of building them into a certain mold that then is reinforced by a series of additional courses that never really seem to end.
Yeah. I think that the price tags and stuff, it's like, it's all subjective value that they throw in there. And there's some very, I don't want to name him because he's litigious, but basically like, so I got out of that, right? But there's basically like a whole world of like keen manipulation tactics that they teach, right? From like the very reasoning, like how they structure those seminars are intentional to be like, so like they will, for one, they start off by like there's like a whole exact template, right? That this one guy does, right? And then you go through all the other ones that you start, and they all follow the exact same template because it's so effective for the like webinars and seminars, right? Like to the point that they literally just copy the script and they just like kind of Mad Lib it, right? For like whatever business opportunity they're selling, right? And yeah, it is designed to, you know, kind of just scratch that itch that you need some extra knowledge or something. But there's no secret, man. I think a lot of people who have been in school for their like entire, you know, working career or whatever, they're kind of like, well, what do I need to do to get there? And in reality, a lot of things in life aren't cut and dry like that. You have to problem solve. You have to adapt. You have to know and kind of figure things out on your own, you know? And it's kind of like this learned helplessness. I think it just that some people have. So they need something to go to, if that makes sense. And that's where that demand is filled, even though it's complete hot air. But yeah, it's I don't know. It taps into human psychology a little bit. I had like a person who bought a course, and it wasn't even like I was doing like a $1,000 thing, right? I was just doing this because I had some knowledge on like advertising and stuff. But a lot of people who were buying it, I noticed, were like people who were like, one guy like bought this course, right? And then he's like, he sends me this long message about how he wants to like, he's in a tough financial spot, XYZ, you know, like really like he wanted to get his shit together, right? Like an older guy. And then I looked through like a week later, he never even opened it. He never even went through. Like he had this long conversation with me. And then it kind of clicked with me. I'm like, shit, these people are just in pain. And like, I don't want to monetize that. like that, this guy never even, like he spent like a couple $100 on it and he didn't even open the first lesson. He never asked for a refund, but he never even opened it. Like that to me shows that like, you know, that moment in particular stood out to me. But yeah, there's also a bunch of people who fake their sales numbers. There's one guy in particular that faked an entire series that I was starting to notice when I was in that industry. They fake their sales numbers. They create like fake orders. They show people and stuff like that. And they do these like fake invoicing tricks. They do a bunch of other stuff to not only like, you know, to act like they're successful, but like act like they're giving you proof, right? But that's fake too. And it gets to a point where a lot of people, like, you know how like in the prank channels on YouTube, it got to a point where like a lot of them were just like topping each other. You know what I mean? Like upping the ante each time. You know what I'm talking about? And then it's just all complete. It's very fake, right? And I don't know. Some people can live in that world. I can't, man. I can't go to sleep at the end of the night and be like, I'm not proud of what I made. You know, like that industry as a whole is not. Even if you're trying to do good in it, you're still lumped in with the bad folk. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds pretty predatory on like vulnerable, emotional, insecure people.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'd love to know if there's anything that you won't cover. Like, is there anything on your channel where you're like, yeah, I'd love to talk about that, but I can't, or I'm not going to, or I'm afraid to, or anything like that? Is there a place that you won't go?
I mean, that's kind of a loaded question because can you tell me something that'll get you in trouble? But,
exactly. Just some euphemism or something.
It's hard to say things without a shadow of a doubt because then you kind of like, I don't know. I'm not like someone who, you know, everyone has to make this distinction. And it's something that concerns me with YouTube as a whole that, you know, one day you're just going to piss off the wrong person, right? Whether you're even trying to like paint a broader picture about an issue in society, you're not trying to single out one person, but they just take that personally, right? Like this is bad for business. Take this video down type shit, right? And they target you. There's some aspects of like, you got to pick your battles, but for things that I can't cover, I would say there's certain things in the music industry I wouldn't want to talk about right now. I like things that are going on just because it's not something you probably want to draw attention to. And I'd say that there's other things in politics you probably don't want to draw attention to. But politics is a little bit like different because there's so much, it's such a mess. You know what I mean? There's so many conspiracy theories. There's so much stuff like day in, day out that comes in with that. It gets kind of lost in the noise, you know? But I wouldn't say I'm afraid to talk about anything in politics. I would say the music industry is probably the sketchiest, in all honesty. Yeah, I don't know. Other than like demonetization or things that might get me demonetized, like you can't talk about like modern DTOs. I think that's against YouTube's TOS. There's a specific thing. Like you can't give like updates on the Hells Angels or something like that, you know?
What is a DTO?
A drug trafficking organization.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you can't give modern discussions of that. There's some, like obviously you don't want to talk too much about like Mexico's cartel, but you know, yeah, I don't know, man. I think I don't know. It's definitely, it's a lot easier to address issues. And I think it's a smarter thing that I've learned is to not focus on one person or one entity, but rather paint a broader picture. That way you're not singling anyone out because these people are usually just like players in a game. You know what I mean? And this, you kind of want to do more commentary on like the, you know, the big picture, not the people that if it's not them, it's somebody else, right? Who's willing to do it. Does that make sense? In some sketchy industry. But yeah, I don't know. Nothing too specific, but definitely you don't want to talk about the underworld too much in the modern day.
Yeah, you don't want to end up being the focal point of Super Sociable's YouTube channel in 2030.
Like Scare Theater, he's another channel. He disappears for like 6 months and they're already doing like conspiracy videos on him. Like, where'd he go?
Oh no.
Well, yeah. Well, he's fine, but he just kind of moved on from YouTube. But it's just like I think it comes with the territory. If you speculate on things, that your audience will naturally become speculative as well, and you kind of have to rein that in a little bit so they don't get too carried away, like some of those UFO channels. But yeah, I don't know, man. I forget what we were discussing specifically.
Well, the modern stuff is a good point. I mean, I think that to some degree, no matter almost what your style of content is, it can be easier when you're talking about potentially sensitive subjects. If it happened like 70, 80, 100 years ago, there are less likely to be a whole bunch of people around that will be greatly upset. Like the great-granddaughter of whoever you made a video on, probably not going to come after you. I mean, probably not going to come after you, as opposed to
surprised though.
A modern thing.
You really?
Yeah,
yeah, you would, because it reminds me of something that I posted on Facebook 6-7 years ago. It was of local relevance, and it was about something that was kind of scandalous in the 60s, 50s, 60s, a thing that was published. I mentioned a book about it because the actual text is very hard to find. I made a post about this, and somebody who I hadn't talked to in 15 years, you know, you've got those people that you're like social media friends with because you went to high school with them or something, but you don't actively participate in a friendship with them. Well, they came out of the woodwork and it was like, hey, I don't know what your intentions are. I just want you to take that post down if you don't mind, because my grandmother was really upset about it when I was a child. Like, there's lingering stuff that trickles down through families and communities that riles people even several generations down the line. I don't think anything is safe.
Yeah, I think there is a general, you're right. But like obviously, I think the one thing is like when something happens in the modern day, like when it's happening now, right? There's a lot of added emotion because it's going down right now. It's in the moment, right? Obviously, as time passes, usually there's some easement. Is that the right word? But just some easing in terms of, you know, emotions regarding the subject where like a civil discussion usually can happen. Like, I hate to use politics as like an example because I don't like to talk about anything regarding like politics, but you know, if we look at like the history of like the music industry or the, you know, political world and power, usually there've been things in the past that have happened, right? And there's a track record there. and people are much more open and willing to discuss things and kind of be like, oh, that's what was really going on in the past. But when it comes to like the modern day, there's a lot more, noise, if that makes sense, and a lot of charged opinions that are very divisive, if that makes sense. And I think sometimes it kind of derails the discussion because, like I said, in the music industry in particular, it's like, okay, well, if I bring up like, yeah, a lot of artists and like if I say this out loud, like the pop charts have been rigged since the beginning of time, right? That's if you look at like the history books, that's fundamentally true, and there are recorded instances where it's been able to be manipulated since the beginning of time, and there's people who've taken advantage of it, but it's a conspiracy in the modern day to say that an artist is only popular because they're connected to that. Like they don't even acknowledge like industry plants or something like that, right? I don't know. There's some sensitivity that goes away over time, though.
Matt, what did you do? Did you take the post down?
No, I didn't. I really didn't see a reason to. It was. Yeah, it had nothing to do with the person's grandmother either. I mean, here's the crazy thing. Like the real reason I didn't is, yeah, the woman was apparently so tangentially involved. It's not like it was, like she was the subject of this event. Like, no, it took me a while to realize how she even could have been involved in it. But my rationale on it is that the whole point was that the stuff that's in this book is stuff that people really don't know because it was like you can't find the book. It's hundreds of dollars to get a copy now and nobody has it. So it's not like I was putting something out there and then 100 people in town are going to their bookshelves and pulling this thing out. Like, no, I know like 2 people, 3 people with this book, and I'm one of them, and I don't open the thing up. So anyway, I just thought, no. This is more their problem than my problem.
Yeah. That's interesting. I know that. I think that sounds more like gatekeeping on a subject. Obviously, it's like, well, this is my story. Maybe it's that. I don't know. Yeah. That's interesting. I think that, obviously you push the wrong buttons on someone. Who knows? But that goes for anything. I think no matter how it goes, you're gonna come into contact with things, but you just got to pick your battles there. Obviously, there's certain things you probably don't want to highlight too much. Like you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you at like YouTube and stuff, There's
definitely a balance, isn't there?
Yeah, there's
where you want to criticize those things, but also not impede yourself.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is that you need to have a mature discussion about it. I was very, like to give you an example, when I did that Satoshi video, right? I came into contact with like my first instance of like, just like cronyism, like people who have paid opinions, right? Like who will willingly spread misinformation, or not want to have good faith discussion because of their financial incentives, right? And that was kind of eye opening to me when I first did that video. And eventually, like when it kind of like kicked the hornet's nest for a while. Like if you even like look at like the whole like Bitcoin talk, like like the guy who like owned Blockstream or whatever, or like the co-founder of it was like, was anyone contacted by Barely Sociable before this video came out? Like he couldn't believe that I did it myself or something, like I was paid off or something. So they come up with their own conspiracies about like who you are, and they start spreading misinformation. They dig into your past. They start like like they brought up like they went through like old deleted posts on like an old Reddit account about like substance use, right, on me. And then they like brought up that I made like SoundCloud music back in the day, right? So it's like there's, obviously you pick your battles, and especially in like the information age, battles are different now, controlling like what's out there, controlling what shows up at the top of Google search. It's an entire separate, system that is constantly, battling over the narrative for certain things. And that was my like only run-in with it, was like, oh crap, this is happening to me. You know what I mean? Obviously, and then there's like talks that have happened like behind the sines after that video and stuff. And yeah, there's there's certain people that I kind of have to maintain like certain proper relations with the public, if that makes sense. And then there's certain like shadowy figures, but luckily, I don't know, most people in the creator space will tend to how, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. Sorry, I got a little lost there. I don't know. I don't want to say that last part.
No, that's fair.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I know that we have some questions. Like Matt said in the opening, you know, people have really have looked forward to having you on TCU. So Matt, do you want to throw some of those out?
Yeah. And I want to start with one from Isaac that a lot of people had this talking in the week before you've popped on here. What is the delineation between a barely sociable video and a slightly sociable video? How do you decide what's going to be where?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot. Tell you the truth, I don't know. I kind of just, usually it's just like longer, bigger production videos that I put more effort into. But I've even strayed away from that sometimes. It's just like, is this topic main channel worthy kind of thing? But most...
Do you decide that after the fact? Like, is the video done or mostly done when you decide that it's going to be in one or the other?
I mean, it's a fluid process. Sometimes I've planned for things to go in the second channel, but then I find something more and it goes in the main channel. Other times it's the opposite, right? Where you look into something and there's not as much to it as you first thought. And then it kind of gets, you know, narrowed down. Usually I kind of save the second channel for like debunking stuff, you know,
Okay.
Sometimes like quick updates, sometimes, you know, mysteries that really like a lot of internet mysteries in particular, like that subgenre is filled with a lot of just like internet nonsense, if that makes sense. Like a lot of spooky rumors and stuff like that. And I don't like to get, you know, if you spend enough time, you'll realize that there's an infinite number of bored people who are willing to just write random, you know, senseless crap that you can't find a primary source for, that just like is meant to like muddy the waters and stuff. So yeah, a lot of that, like the second channel, I just wanted to make like quicker content. But yeah, usually there's no like musical intro. Sometimes I do like a music intro, where I compose the music for it and do like the title card or whatever. So usually main channel will have that too, is its own track. But yeah, that's about it.
You must have a ton of topics then that got cut and shelved along the way.
Yeah.
What's your scrap heap like?
I got a list.
And that, Kevin, that happens with Vsauce 2 videos a lot. Didn't we have a full-on episode where we described that process of how most ideas don't pan out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's happened, a lot lately. I think there were two recently that were just like, can't really find the angle on this. And at some point you just kind of have to put it on that back burner and move on to a next one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the frustrating part with a lot of like, if you actually, there's some people, I'm not trying to isolate anybody out there, but when it comes to YouTube, there's a lot of dry content, right? You can tell the people who are making it, they don't really care about what they're talking about, right? There's a lot of like, they just read the first page of Wikipedia and they're regurgitating that to you.
I'd love if you threw somebody under the bus just because, Kevin, isn't that the struggle? Is like every day you just want to throw a name out there and be like, you know what, they're just reading a page that's already there.
Yeah, I mean, I try to show if I'm reading something I show it. There's some videos that have blown up and they weren't even their work, and it's like, look. I understand that you want to bring attention to someone else's work, but if they're writing the entire script for you and you're just giving them credit, like, it's basically just like theft. Obviously, like Reddit and stuff like this has had some like back and forths with this. And like, what's the idea? If you're reporting on things that are going on the internet, you're saying, I got this from here. Totally acceptable. Right. But if you're going, hey, and you're disguising that you kind of wrote it, that's just straight up plagiarism. And that's just like, and there's no shame in that. People won't think you're any less because you got information from elsewhere. It actually makes it more transparent to the viewer, who then can see where you got it and then can kind of cross-reference other things that you're saying, right? Which you should have a goal to be as transparent as possible with your research. But yeah, I think there's a lot of topics that as well that like I've looked into specifically, and I realize it's not what like everyone else is saying who's just read the first page of Wikipedia, right? And a lot of people will still make videos on it anyways, just because it's ad revenue, right? They don't care if it's BS. They don't care if they're not adding anything new to the discussion. But it creates this upload dilution where people, especially content farm channels, are just trying to basically fill in keywords and do videos on particular subjects that's just barely, watchable enough that they can cast a wide net and make a bunch of money. And that's the business of content farming. And that's way different than like I think there's two ways to do YouTube, right? There's the daily upload, kind of like regular upload production farming, right? That is the lowest effort as possible, like most efficient, pay the writers, pay the editors, right? And then there's like the passion projects, which you can tell when someone cares about a topic, and it stands out. It stands out. Like if you go through, there's so much dry content farm like stuff. So I don't know, man. For me, I've seen like the first example I can give you specifically is Markovian parallax denigrate was like a video I covered. It was an internet mystery that had nothing to it. Right? It was just complete BS. But for years, the Wikipedia article had been like misquoted, right? And I point this out. And then I just go through all the other YouTube channels who didn't research it, right? Because all it took was going to like the primary source for like where the messages were located to realize that it was all a hoax, right? So yeah, it's you'd be surprised how many people will do videos on things without checking on them. And then for me as a creator, I'll research into them. I'll write like an intro to the script because it sounds interesting. Then you get into it later and you're like, wait, this is just a nothing burger, Yeah. But yeah, a lot of things on the internet are like that.
That's not just a YouTube internet problem, though. I mean, I know that, Matt, you have been frustrated endlessly on doing research on a bunch of topics where people get like everything wrong all the time. Like almost nothing is ever right.
In this next video that's coming out, I feel I was thinking about it today because I came across something where I felt that one of the people involved got something completely wrong that is just, I mean, there's so much evidence of it being different. And I'm like, did they try to do that? Did they just screw it up? You'd think that somebody involved would get it right as opposed to, like the third and fourth generation people to access a bit of information. But yeah, it's crazy how much stuff is fake, and I know that we talked a while ago about the guy who did research about change in Canada, about basically combinations of change. And the takeaway on that was that he was advocating for the elimination of the penny. Well, that's not at all what his academic work was about. It's not what his paper said, but some weenie in the PR office of his college who wanted to highlight one of the professor's research made it into this thing that's like, man wants to get rid of the penny. Well, they weren't going to write about change combinations. Maybe they'll grab on to tossing the penny. Well, all of a sudden you just have something that's invented. It wasn't there. And it's obvious. All you had to do in that case was look at the actual paper where in the executive summary of it, he's very clear about what that paper is and isn't. And nobody did that. Nobody clicked for the paper they wrote an article about or read the first paragraph, or if they did, they completely ignored it because they didn't care. And that is absolutely constant on YouTube.
Well, and didn't it piss that guy off and he didn't want to talk about it anymore because everybody got it wrong? Wasn't there more to the story that?
Yeah, I know that. If I remember right, on his own website where he has all of his publications, here's my body of work so you can take a look. There's a snarky line or two that's like, hey, here's the stuff that was famous, but it's not really what you think. Here it is anyway. And it felt like he was resigned to that happening. But it's incredibly frustrating. I'm one of the things that I've tried to cultivate over the last few years is a circle of people on YouTube who make a special effort not to do that. There's a certain type of person that is horrified when they accidentally do it, that they would be embarrassed if they did. And those are the people you want to be friends with. That's who you want to get to know. You don't want to get to know anybody who is comfortable doing what we're talking about.
Yeah. And this, I kind of can relate this to what I saw on like the marketing side of like YouTube, even though I was only there for, a little bit. There's like, you get a very good read that like the metagame is kind of like faking things and going with it and just telling your audience one thing. And I couldn't, at the end of the day, it takes just as much effort to, be genuinely informative as it does to cover up the bullshit. And
it's hard.
And so there's no, like, if you're human, the way to build trust with an audience too is to admit when you get something wrong, because you're human. And I think there's no way to get everything perfectly right over time, but you can, just keep that as a continual flow. Like, hey, I messed this up. Hey, this is where for one of my videos, like, I was really frustrated with because it seemed so solvable, this one mystery. And it was like the Ruth Price lady, right? So I'm going through like all the newspaper archives on like this one phone call that took place. We didn't even know. There's only a few bits of info that you're given, right? You just have this lady's name. It's very general. And you have to find, when this incident took place. There's a video I did on the second channel. And I couldn't help but feel like it was like just a needle in a haystack thing, where if I just came across the right article in the newspaper archives, I would find it, right? I searched for like a week, right? I searched for like a week on like various commercial services. And well, I ultimately kind of came to the conclusion, like, yeah, this is probably, I'm not sure, but I kind of lean on this being more real than fake. But then like a couple weeks later, someone found it, right? After I put the video out and like another podcast did an episode on it, then someone found the needle in the haystack and it ended up being real. So we didn't even, it's the Ruth Price video, if you guys know what I'm talking about. But basically the way they found it was searching through a library archive. So like actually going into an institution and doing research from a complete archive, because the one I was using was a commercial archive. Does that make sense? And like I then followed up with the audience, like, hey, wow, I basically I want to like kind of address where I came short and keep them updated with like the flow of information, because this is like an active thing that's being discussed in the internet, right? So yeah, I think there's ways that you can communicate it. I don't think anybody can be right 100% of the time and get every little detail right. I know that for a fact. I mispronounce like so many different places wrong in videos that, there's small errors that can be overlooked, but like maybe a major error, those are things that you need to correct usually. But yeah, or explain if someone has a problem with your video, you should be able to defend it, right? And explain your point of view, right? Anyways.
I don't think people realize how time consuming all of that stuff is. And really, if you're making content, I think that's the lure. I think that's the appeal, where even well-meaning, honest people look at content and they're like, okay, if I do it this way, I'm not going to have a video out for 4 months. And they don't want to take that route. It's hard to sustain something, when the pace is so uncertain. Or I'll get really deep into a video 3-4 weeks in terms of effort, and then I have to scrap it. Boy, that makes the consistent stuff a lot more appealing.
Yeah, and it's lower effort, and you just talk about things that are popular already, that are happening now. A lot of YouTubers take that route, and it's like you show up every day type YouTube, or you work on some bigger project. Big projects tend to be overwhelming. For me in particular, I've had this issue. I've struggled with, my channel kind of grew quickly relative to the amount of videos I've uploaded, right? So all of a sudden you have this big new audience, right? And you just got thrown into things. Like I think I went from like 1K to 100K in like one weekend, right? Just because I got picked up by the algorithm. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I need to take this a little bit more seriously now, right? But it's definitely definitely a process where you have to just completely kind of deal with the punches of the pressure of working on a bigger project. And the longer you go without uploading, right, the more it kind of messes with your head a little bit too. A lot of people don't talk about that too, but there's upload anxiety. I don't know if that's a thing, but when you don't have that constant reaffirmation or attention, it is kind of like a drug in the sense that it acts on some level of your dopamine, because you're not only getting more views, you're starting to make a little bit more money. You're getting positive reinforcement from the comments, and it really it scratches some part of your brain, something where it feels really good. Right? And when you start to build that up, then you don't want to get rid of that. Then all of a sudden it feels like you need that dopamine rush. So a lot of other YouTube creators will forego common sense and integrity for the sake of maintaining that high that they're on, if that makes sense. And that's where you start to get like a lot of rushed content. That's where you start to get a lot of other, it's like, well, this person used to make better videos than they used to, or whatever. And not say that's always true, but I think you guys get what I'm kind of referring to. There's incentives. It's like a carrot on a stick for the creator sometimes. Perverse, yes.
You mentioned the Ruth Price case. Can you say a line about that? But also, that elides into really a good question here, which is, of all the things that you've looked at, whether you've made a video on it or not, if one of these things could be figured out, a case could be solved overnight, something like that, what would you want it to be? What do you want to wake up tomorrow and see resolved?
Let's see.
It's a hard question, but it's a really good one for somebody who deals in a million atrocities and strange
probably
things.
MH370. There's a conspiracy with that, because I think there were parts of the plane that were found and they were supposed to like get turned over, and then the investigator got like shot or something, right? Or something like that. There was some, obviously it was loosely tied to it. Don't quote me on that as exactly. You can kind of check what I'm talking about.
This is the Malaysia Airlines flight,
exactly.
Right?
So I think I saw one theory regarding it, that the pilot was a friend of a political leader there, and he had just gone to prison that day, right? And obviously there's a lot of contested discussion about what I'm saying. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Never believe me. It's a good, just check out what I'm referring to, but don't take it as fact. Basically, like there was something regarding like MH370's flight path towards the end where it was circling for 30, like for some portion of time. So there's some theory that he was involved in, perhaps like, because it's like a one-party system, I believe, in Malaysia or something like that. God, I wish I had reference material for this, but basically the theory was that he was trying to renegotiate, the return of the people in exchange for that guy went free. Okay. Makes sense? And then when they failed in the negotiation and he crashed into the ocean, then that's the reason that the Malaysian government wasn't willing to cooperate, and I believe they misled certain aspects of the investigation. And the only way to know is to get the black box, right? Which, if the black box comes up there and there's a negotiation, a hostage negotiation on that tape, right? All of a sudden, you've been hiding the truth for how long? Right. Yeah. So the reason that guy went to jail too, I think, was like for having sex or something. For butt sex, I think it's illegal there. Let me look this up. Sorry, you have to bleep that later. What was that?
Back when it was part of the
sodomy. Sorry.
The British Empire, I think it was buggery back in the 50s.
Yeah. So that's what he went to prison for, I believe. So they think that the reason that he was targeted, I don't know. I'm not entirely familiar with the nuances of Malaysian politics, but that's what I recall reading some time ago. And I'd love to know if that theory holds any weight, because it is interesting that they believe it's circled for a portion of time. That's interesting. But yeah, that would be my one.
Do you think there's any hope on figuring that one out? And actually, is that part of the process too? When you go through these, sometimes you're like, hey, you know what? There's a really good chance that we could sort this out over time. And other times, do you feel like, yeah, this is just going to be an unknown forever?
Well, it depends. I don't know how black boxes will hold up under the ocean conditions over prolonged periods of time. And then the aspect of it too is like, then you have to hope that it makes it through government hands, like assuming it gets returned to the country. And then they accurately represent what was found on the tape. Like it's been found for other times that one of the Pan Am flight, like they covered up basically Pan Am was like very closely tied to like the U.S. government for flights back in the day, right? And when there was this one plane that crashed, they refused to include the distress call because it was kind of a muffled distress call, but it came from that area, right? But they never included it in the tape. They basically said, well, due to conflicting opinions on what was on the tape and its inability and open for interpretation, it's not included. But then, it was found years later, and it basically showed a bunch of other stuff that it showed that some of the things that they discounted in the original report which could have led to more lawsuits and other things like that, had basically kind of been brushed over to help the company. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know the truth. I really don't. But it could be something mundane too. Maybe you just went crazy that day, right? A lot of times we look for, things that make sense to kind of fill in the gaps. But in reality, weird shit happens all the time, and I think that that's the other thing too, is that life isn't always perfectly orchestrated within like the circumstances that surround it, right? Sometimes stuff that makes no sense just happens. You know what I mean? And we just rationalize that with our own feelings, right? Like why did
that is, that I was going to say that's the perfect answer to go into the next thing we wanted to ask. And it's really like the question that probably should have come first. And that's why I kind of saved it to the end here. Dan the Latch asked why people make up conspiracies and have crazy, complex mysteries around things when reality is like what you just described, with so many moving parts, intriguing stories, a host of knowns and unknowns and all this. Why would anybody bother to invent something when reality is the way it is?
Depends on the context of like the conspiracy. See, that word has a very negative connotation. And I think when it comes to like even discussing the nuances of this word, a lot of people will, in bad faith, try to say you're to one extreme, right? And I think it's important to take things on a case by case basis. Sometimes a lot of internet noise and rumor mills that are created, like 4chan type things, right? Like 4chan thrives on just making crap up, right? For example, because they're bored. You give a bunch of people anonymity and the ability to post whatever they want online, and it has a unique ability to create internet, rumors, right? So
look at Eggy. We did an episode with Eggy where he had a bit of a run-in with some federal bureaus because
a 4chan meme
inventions on 4chan.
Yeah. And I think 4chan in particular is very interesting because it shows something kind of interesting about like when you give people, it's not even complete anonymity, obviously, that unless they're using like Tor or whatever, right? With that could be cracked open too. But point is, when people think that they're anonymous, they tend to do things that they wouldn't normally do. Like sometimes I remember, like, you ever have that one guy in the comment section who's like, no, actually you're wrong. And they just never refuse to elaborate, or they will basically just try to like pick, kind of like poke up or something like that, even if it's in bad faith. And just because they can do that, right? I think the idea is that when they've even, if you ever have like your sunglasses on and you just feel like a lot more comfortable with, being colder to people, if that makes sense, in public, or like there's something about like having that guise of anonymity, or like when people have road rage in the car, they feel very protected because there's things that distance themselves from things that they would actually say in like a meaningful conversation. So when it comes to like things like 4chan, now you're like 4 times removed from the situation behind a computer screen on a dark corner of the internet, on an anonymous message board or whatever, right? And then you get some really weird shit because they're bored or just because they can. And then other people go, oh no, he's telling the truth, guys. And they all just kind of, they create their own entertainment out of it for like a lot of internet rumors. As far as like other conspiracies and stuff like that, I would say it depends on things on a case by case basis. Sometimes things are just like misinterpreted, right? And then that, takes on a whole new life of its own. Or the loudest portion of a story tends to be the one that's remembered the most, even though it's not like factually correct. There's a lot of nuance to how information is shared, or on how a lot of nuance to how information is kind of dispersed on the internet and how it kind of collectively occupies the hive mind. But yeah, I don't know.
No, that's that could be its own podcast series is what happens to information, because you get 2 parts of it. One is the distribution, and a lot of things go wrong with that. But then the other part is people receiving it. And as you were detailing that process about why people gravitate towards some of those things, when you just plain do research, when you look into a topic and try to come up with as many facts as deeply as you can, you're kind of stuck with what you've got. And that may be a lot, and it may be very little. It may be what you're looking for, and it may not be. But that is what it is, and you have to deal with that. There's no room to pursue anything that interests you or satisfies some mental or psychological need that you have. You have to deal with reality, and it's a lot more interesting to pursue information in such a way that you yourself are satisfied in that pursuit. Well, that's really how most people receive information. And the more, I don't want to derail this too much, but there's a fair bit of research coming out now about how echo chambers and things like that really do affect people's judgment and views. And all of this combines into craziness.
Yeah, I would say there's something particularly interesting about like the statistic that like older people in particular are very notorious for sharing misinformation on the internet. So like a lot of like political conspiracy theories, you can kind of think of as like, not just like, look, I make this distinction because people are very charged. But the point that you have to, a lot of like conspiracy theories that you see in the political realm, they make like no sense, but like some people are there for it just for the entertainment factor. It's like ARGs for old people. Yeah. And they're kind of just like, did you hear that? I don't care if it's true, but it's crazy. It's like, what if it was true? How do you know? Like, and there are people who thrive on that grift. There's one company in particular that is notorious for this kind of thing. And oh God, they sell a lot of woo, if you know who I'm talking about. There's the amount of like videos and stuff. God, yeah, well, it's just bad faith. It's like let's find very gullible people, and then they'll get stoned on the couch, and then go, whoa, this is crazy. But yeah, I would say that there's entertainment factors, like even for me, like my channel kind of got popular off Lake City Quiet Pills. And the loudest part of that story is the part that there could have been assassins tied to it, right? That's the what if. And we like asking questions a hell of a lot more than we like getting answers. We're like, well, what if it was this way? There's something inherently tied to our curiosity that plays into how you get so many out there theories. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's very hard to draw a fine line between like discussing this type of thing and not getting lumped into the people who do like, this happened on June 7th, 1954. June 7th, it was 6 plus 7 plus 1984. And coincidence like that, there's extremes on either side where there's no skepticism, and then there's just off the rails, batshit crazy.
Yeah. Well, the questions thing reminded me of David Lynch talking about Twin Peaks. This is such an aside, but this is what popped into my brain. Is that he was so upset. If anyone's familiar with Twin Peaks, that show was created at a time where you had shows like Murder, She Wrote that was incredibly popular, where you have a mystery at the beginning, and then Angela Lansbury solves it by the end, and everything's all tied up. There are no loose ends, and you move on to the next episode. Mystery of the week kind of thing. And the whole point of Twin Peaks was to be the opposite of that. It was to kind of live in the mystery and not solve who killed Laura Palmer. That was the whole point of the show, was not to solve the murder, but to kind of like explore the ripple effects that her death has in this community of Twin Peaks. But everybody flipped out. The audience flipped out that they needed to know who killed her, and they pressured, like the ABC executives or whatever, and they demanded that David Lynch and Mark Frost solve the murder. They made them do it. So if you've ever watched that show, I think it's like episode 8 or something. I don't remember off the top of my head. The murder
got solved.
Well, that's what happened. Is that the show
I didn't want to watch anymore.
It tanked after they solved the murder. It was like the mystery was gone, the balloon was deflated, and it was over. And the show was canceled. They had like a second season, and they tried to create like a new mystery with Cooper's ex-partner, Wyndham Earle, blah, 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 blah. But it was done. And it was all about what you're talking about. It's like the mystery was what was interesting, not the answer.
I think it plays into some aspect of like how we evolved as a species. Like there's something inherently, I would say, good for your survival about like, you know, kind of questioning things or being, you know, like I just like a caveman left his cave, and then all of a sudden, there's like all of his food's gone, right? Or something. I don't know. Like all of his meat has been like that he has in his cave is gone. Then this creates this survival scenario where you're like, well, it could have been the like saber-toothed tiger next door. What that basically was inherently programmed into us, right? For our own survival, right? For whatever, you know, I don't know. It's just an inherent trait. I wouldn't say for survival specifically. I'll clarify that there. But yeah, it's definitely something that's ingrained in us. We all love a good mystery.
Well, we all love your channel. It's doing really well. Like you said, it blew up very quickly, but for good reason. You know, the style, the tone, the editing, the things that you're exploring, the research that you do, and you take it seriously, which we do greatly appreciate very much. Like to hear that for sure. I do think that we need to figure out this platypus onesie with the milk sack in the stomach. You know, we can talk about that offline. Find some manufacturers. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But until then, I want to just thank you for coming on the show. And everybody really needs to check out the Barely Sociable channel. Start there. You know, there are other channels where you can see the slightly and the musical, you know, from there. But Isaac is freaking out. We didn't ask you what your fursona is.
Oh God. Oh man, I gotta be. I'll have to.
Do you have a fursona answer? You didn't have a mascot answer. Do you have a fursona answer?
I mean, that's, you gotta understand, if you're a mystery channel, kind of the fun is the, you know, the mystery behind the
imagining your fursona.
Yeah, you gotta leave that up for interpretation. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, I hope everybody is picturing some sort of whatever fursona you have in mind for Barely Sociable. Let us know.
Jackalope. That's what it is. It's a mythical animal.
Yes.
Something we can't verify.
A Pegasus. All right, guys. We will be back next week with CoffeeZilla. If you want to hang out with us, just join the Discord. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. But we are out of here. Until then, we'll see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and we've been shocked by all the new support this year. The World's Ending and I'm Late for Work, Gib Tom, Sid Poke, Demetrius, Atrocious Guff. You guys really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Risebread, Sean Malone, Ryan, Kamikaze, Maria, Marco Sheep, Tom Videogre, Jelksies, and Dan the Latch. And a tremendous shout out to our elite Baby Gang commanders, Linus and Trevstead, Boromir, Bot Dogs, Chinchilla, Isaac, Conrad, James, Andrew, Jeff Davis, Patrick Pister, Baseweight, Monahim, Dojangles, and Zero. You really are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Discord savior Latterman, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. And thanks to Baseweight for the use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme, and to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.